how do you go about prioritizing your tech changes and what you're going to be working on going forward?
You kind of get to a point where you're like, do I need another person? And then you have to think about, okay, what are all my people doing? And is there a software that does that? And you have to then research what the maintenance looks like, how, that's where the whole process of demoing the software, understanding exactly how it works. When we implemented Sage, it took us a very long time, I feel, to get comfortable in understanding how we were going to use it and our approach to it, just because, we weren't going to switch to another system for a new set of problems, right? It might fix one thing, but it doesn't fix everything. So when we, carved out a subset of our entities and said, we're going to use Sage, we're very deliberate about how that looked, what it was going to be, how much strain it was going to be to manage the multiple systems on our team, and what that all looked like. So I think that usually, your first thought is always like, oh, we need to hire another person. But that is also expensive and comes with its own set of not problems, but just training, right? No individual is really good till about a year in. So you're at least a year out from any relief of whatever problem you're experiencing. And may not even feel some relief even with another person, because on top of your regular job that you're already feeling overflowing on, you are also then training somebody. So 2 jobs. So usually then it's an evaluation of, what are we doing? What's inefficient? For us, I was taking multiple days to prepare reports, which now out of one system, I can produce in 2 days. I can produce all the reports in 2 days, all the footnoting, all the review, everything condensed down to what was probably a week. And then plus, because anytime there was adjustments, I had to make an adjustment, run it to a big data file, make sure that adjustment was captured, so that on my next round of reporting that I spit all out of Excel, kind of everything that was entered into the system then was going to appear on my reports. Now, everything that's entered into the system spits out of the system. So if I make an adjustment, that adjustment flows through, automatically shows up on the reports that I'm going to produce. So I think that those are the types of questions we ask ourselves. And, they happen when there's just evolution in a family office, right? You have life events, you have growth as generations age. Maybe they're starting to do their own things, whereas generations used to function kind of as one family unit. I mean, if you think about how your own family functions, you and your kids function as one family unit until they're old enough to go off and do things on their own. And then all of a sudden you have 2 family units, and in the middle there, you have 1.5 family units.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. These families are constantly changing, right? As any family does. But then also you're looking at that kind of key marker for you is when you kind of get up to that point where you're taking a look at potentially adding additional staff. And then you step back and say, is there a way to automate this? Is a way that we can kind of avoid that adding that staff to be able to continue to do what we need to do?
Yes. And what are the costs of automating, right?
Yeah.
So is it appropriate to be automating something? I think it's another good question to ask. And if the automation is going to reduce the risk of error. So if something can be fully automated and fully integrated between systems, whereas you might have an individual who you have to train to recognize errors, like that might be a key process that you could automate, right? Versus having to train somebody. What if they stay? What if they go? Do you have documentation of what they learned so that then you can train the next person if you have to? So I think processes that have room for error, where there's just a lot of manual intervention, are great things to evaluate when you're looking at potential software options.
I think that's a great way to put it. I think that makes sense. It's not always just a straight up ROI type of situation, right? There's other intrinsic value that tech spend can have. Why do family offices struggle so much though with technology and don't necessarily get the results that they want?
I think this family offices struggle because they're so small. It's sometimes difficult to find the right service provider. You also have to have staff internally that speak tech language, and speak it enough that they can, every software uses a different set of terms. So it's like a different set of language. Every time you have to learn a new software, it could be attributes, it could be dimensions, it could be classes, all basically terms designed around tagging data. That's it. But every software is different. Understanding how those tags and how those things work within the software, what the outputs are within the software. So I think it's a combination of making sure you have at least a 1 to 2 people internally on your staff who kind of get it. I always, when I speak with other family offices, when they're evaluating software, I always say, like, you have to find your one person who's going to be your super user, the person who in your organization, people are going to come to and ensure that the system is being maintained accurately and you're using it, the way that you've designed to use it. And then ultimately finding obviously a software that works. And I think all software only solves 80% of your problems. Every software is going to have its pros. Every software is going to have its cons. You may get some solutions. You may exchange it for a different set of problems, but maybe they're smaller problems than the ones you were dealing with before. And then there's the third piece, which is finding the right, if you choose to use an implementation service provider or consultant, finding the right one and making sure that they are knowledgeable enough in the software you're implementing to help you do that. And a service provider that you might use to evaluate software and all the potential products out there may not be the same person who should help you implement it. And I think that's really important to recognize is where people's strengths are. Because if you don't have somebody who fully understands the software helping you implement it and who kind of hasn't been around the block with it, they might not be the greatest at helping you with your solution. Because in my experience, family offices, each one has we all do basically the same thing, but we all have our own unique way of doing things. And I've been at a few family offices now. I've been at many family offices from a client, from a vendor side, and everybody, same basic functions, slightly different.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. I think, using consultants can be a great way to help with technology, search and selection. They're doing market scans. They're knows what's available to you in the marketplace. But maybe if you get to the point where, say, you select Sage, they haven't done that many Sage implementations where you could go with a consulting firm that maybe specializes in Sage implementations, that they're going to know the ins and outs. They're going to know the ways in which you can be more successful in that onboarding of those kind of major systems in particular. And
yes,